We thank you for joining us for the first ever live webcast from DePauw University featuring our special guest, the president of DePauw University, Robert G. Bottoms. Thank you, Dr. Bottoms, for being with us. We're going to get a couple of house cleaning items out of the way, and then we'll move on with questions. We've had folks submit questions before this program began. We continue to accept your questions right now. So the first thing we want to say is you see that bar at the bottom of your screen, webcast@depauw.edu. is where you can send a question. We are monitoring those questions as we speak, and as they come in, they'll appear on my screen. We're hoping to get as many questions answered tonight as we can in the time we have, which is about an hour. So again, webcast@depauw.edu. Email your questions in, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. Those that we can't get to, we will answer personally to you because we have received quite a few in advance already. We also want to thank the fine folks at IHETS who helped make this program possible tonight for their technical support, helping our 361 Degrees program get this together for us. And we also want to welcome the audience listening on WGRE, the student radio station here at DePauw University, one of the top 5 student radio stations in the USA. They're carrying this signal live tonight. Let's begin, Dr. Bottoms, by talking about an appearance you're going to be making on a statewide television program that airs over the weekend, Inside Indiana Business, that has to do with an initiative that you see as very important to DePauw. What is that?
Well, one of the things, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, several times during the hour, we're working hard to increase the internationalization of our student body. And in about 8 days, Gwen, my wife, and I will travel to India, compliments of Cummins Engine. Cummins chairman, as you know, is Tim Solso, who's on our board of trustees. He and his staff have worked to set this up. I'll be traveling to various cities in India, visiting Cummins plants, visiting universities in India with really 2 goals: to begin to aggressively recruit Indian students to come to DePauw as 4-year degree-seeking students, and also trying to find internships for DePauw students who might want to have an internship in India.
Paul B. Watt, who is a professor and director of Asian Studies here at DePauw, asked this question that was pre-submitted. He wanted to know, what is the educational importance of building an international student body at DePauw?
Well, I brought up this initiative in my opening convocation with the faculty, and it really came from some examination over the summer as I thought about, to be not just a nationally known institution, but really an internationally known institution. What do we need to do? What do we need to do for our students maybe that we have not been doing? As you well know and alumni know, we've had a diversity initiative at the university for the last 20 years. That's concentrated primarily on the United States, increasing the number of African Americans, Hispanic, Latino, Asian population, and we've done a pretty good job of that. We always would want to improve more. But DePauw University, to my knowledge, has never made an effort to really recruit in an aggressive way international students to DePauw. I think if we're able to do that, a number of good things happen. First of all, I know there are students around the world who, if they knew about us, would benefit from a DePauw education. I talked to 2 Indian students this morning who are very well adjusted, enjoying DePauw, are pleased they learned about DePauw. They did it via the internet, applied, were accepted. They're here. They're having a good experience. And if we could increase this presence, I think we would benefit international students who would study here, and we would benefit our students. We want our students to be very comfortable in the international arena.
What are we talking about in terms of numbers?
Well, I don't know, because we've never tried. I've been pushed on that several times, and so I have a number. It's based on nothing other than a hunch, but over the next few years we'd like to be able to recruit at least 50 students a year, which over time, of course, would give us a critical mass of a couple of hundred students.
And that leads to the question from Rob Bridigan, class of '84, who's in Michigan. And if I mispronounce names tonight, pardon me. We've got a lot of different names here, and I know a lot of alums, but I don't know them all. Rob wants to know, is a liberal arts education relevant in today's world of specialization? Kind of ties into what we're talking about. If yes, please describe the relevance. In other words, everybody now looking at the cost of education and what is this going to get me in the end?
Well, I'm going to relate to that in a very personal way. As you know, Gwen and I have 2 children. We have a son, I have a daughter. They both were English majors when they were in college. They're in their mid-30s now. They've had jobs in journalism. They've had jobs with startup companies. They've had some experience in graduate school. One of our children even worked for a university. One now works for a large company, various jobs. What they've learned is that their liberal arts education prepared them because it taught them how to communicate, taught them how to analyze. I guess my assessment of the current job opportunities for students is that companies, industries look for people who can reason well, who can communicate well, have good writing skills. Companies can train people with those skills to conform to what the company expects, but those skills are, I think, more essential now than they've been in the past.
And people are changing jobs. I mean, people are maybe beginning in one field and doing something that's a 180 from where they started. So the ability to adapt, think on your feet, and be flexible seems more important than ever.
I think so. I grew up in Alabama. A lot of Hoosiers, of course, grow up in Indiana, think of themselves. When I grew up, I didn't really think of myself ever leaving the South. Our children have worked on the East Coast, the West Coast, and I don't want to stress the analogy too far, but as I said, I hope our students have the same, I wish for them the same kind of experience we wish for our own children, that is, that they would be at home in different companies, in different atmospheres, and with our international perspective, be at home with people from other cultures.
We're taking your questions at webcast@depauw.edu. If you're just tuning in and you have something you want to have answered, please send it to us. We're taking the questions and they're appearing on my screen. And I have the first question we have from someone that sent one in this evening. Praver Singh, a 2005 graduate who's in New York City, wants to know, Dr. Bottoms, what do you believe are the greatest long-term challenges that DePauw faces, and what steps have you taken or will you take to tackle them?
Well, any university president is going to say one of the greatest long-term challenges is financial. One problem I think we have with some of our alumni, when you come back to campus, you see the renovations that have taken place, the new buildings, you see how good we look. Some people think, they see how our endowment's grown over the past few years, think that we're not in need of money. But one challenge we have is as we develop these new programs in internationalization, we'll talk later, I'm sure, about the Prindle Institute, new initiatives to make DePauw attractive to students. They all cost a lot of money. That means, in turn, another thing we may talk about later, that we have to charge more money than we wish we did. Raising enough money for financial aid so that what my goal would be long term, that any student in America who wants to come to DePauw, and maybe I should even broaden that to international students who are qualified and are accepted here, really want to be here. We want them here because of their past experiences, their high school, the potential they've shown in high school, that they shouldn't be turned away because we don't have the money. Well, the challenge to that, of course, is to keep our annual fund growing so we'll have those scholarship dollars. In terms of our physical plant, you know, I guess you never want to say you've arrived, but we are so pleased with where we are. I think in the future, our biggest challenge is to maintain the quality and the competitive advantage that we've developed in the past few years.
I want to get to the Prindle Institute for Ethics in a while, but perhaps we can talk for a moment about the announcement that was made over, I guess it was Old Gold Weekend. Time is flying, but the announcement that we're renovating the Performing Arts Center. The work is now underway. We have some architect's renderings we can share with you tonight, and also some video that might pop up here in a moment. But Dr. Bottoms, let's talk about what the new PAC, the Green Center for the Performing Arts, will mean for DePauw University going forward.
Well, it means a great deal for us. For students who've been on campus in the last decade, these students would realize how crowded the Performing Arts Center has been. We literally have not had enough office space to have the entire communications department in that building. We've had music professors sharing offices. We've outgrown that building. The building also had some problems. We had windows popping out because of some moisture problems. We needed to upgrade it. We first looked at that building. We thought we might be able to do the renovation for $14 or $15 million. As we investigated, had discussions with the board, the project grew. The building is being expanded to meet the needs both of the School of Music and the Communications Department, the Theater Department, and so we have a $29 million project. We were very pleased that Judson and Joyce Green, Judson, a former chair of the board, made a significant lead gift, as I announced last fall, of $15 million to make this renovation possible.
We're looking now at the architect's renderings of what the building will look like, and One question that some of the alums in the audience might have, Dr. Bottoms, I graduated from DePauw in 1982, and that means I arrived here in '78. And the PAC at that point was a relatively new building. It was one of the things they showed off to you early in the admission tour. And for those of us who maybe don't feel old, but time has marched on a bit, how is it that buildings, it seems like the shelf life of buildings is pretty finite, that a lot of these buildings need to be upgraded, and obviously we're not only trying to keep the buildings nice and presentable and as academically enriching as possible in terms of the functionality of them, but we also are competing with other schools that are building and expanding and improving their facilities.
Well, one of the things the upgrade of the Performing Arts Center will do for us is we've put significant resources into the School of Music. We've enlarged the size of the faculty. We needed that space that I talked about a few minutes ago. Mm-hmm. We'll be going into a national search for a new dean of the School of Music in another year and a half. And our goal with the additional faculty for the School of Music, with a new dean coming in about the time that the renovation is complete, that the School of Music will reach a pinnacle of excellence that it's not known in the past.
And to be a liberal arts college as we are and to have a School of Music makes us unique.
Well, it does. Our School of Music serves college students as well as School of Music students. It's unusual to find a school our size where college students have the opportunity in the music school that our students have, and likewise that students in the School of Music can participate in activities all across small campus and have the same opportunity other students have.
Back to the questions, and this is actually two questions in one from two different individuals. Richard M. Bob from Georgia, class of 1960, asks, are any provisions being made to allow freshman pledges to move into the fraternity houses after fall rush? Why do they have to live in the freshman dorms, he asks. Pledge training, study table, living under the guidance and tutelage of upperclassmen was very valuable to him. That's followed up by Dr. John F. Myers, class of 1964, who lives in Virginia. He writes, I certainly enjoyed living in his house his freshman year, but he's not sure it helped him with his academic pursuits. He goes on to say, I wouldn't trade my experience at DePauw for anything. There's a lot of debate about the changes in the Greek system in recent years, the state of the Greek system at DePauw University. How has the change from the way it was when I arrived, where you started rushing the day literally you arrived on campus, to moving it to spring, changed not only Greek life at DePauw, but the academic programs we can offer students?
Well, I think it's kind of moved us into the 21st century. When you came, we didn't treat the men and women the same. The women went through rush, but they lived in the dormitories, so the men, as you suggested, did move into the fraternity houses. Once we built enough residence hall space for first-year students to live as a class in residence halls, not move into the fraternity house, we noticed a couple of things happen. First, of course, we were able to treat the men and women the same. I think that's important. The second thing that happened as we moved rush from the fall into the spring, our retention rate increased from where it was probably when you were in school in the 80% from first year to the second year to about 92% now. So if you say, was it a success, I think our retention rate shows that it was a success. And while I've been asked that question many times over the last decade, but I think it's been a good thing for us, and I think the experience that the students are having now affirm that. One of the things that does happen in Greek life, the affinity, the small groups, the support you get, we've carried that really beyond just the Greek system, but throughout the freshman class with what we call DePauw Year 1, where if a student comes to DePauw, they're assigned to a mentor group, they have a student mentor, they take a first-year seminar, they work together as a group, they have a group. We think that's helped our retention. Then we have rush in the second semester. It's improved first semester grades. That's empirically verifiable. And things seem to be working well now. As a matter of fact, I suspect if we were to propose changing things to some of our students now, they might say, oh no, we like them the way they are. You know, people tend to relate to their own experience if it was a positive one at DePauw and think, well, it should always be that way for all people. But we think the changes are very, very positive.
I missed the bowling alley in the hub, but in the
well, I went through 3 ruminations of the bowling alley. I remember when we had a bowling alley, it wasn't used, and so we took it out. And then I remember a few years later there was an outcry from students that, gee, there's not enough to do at DePauw. Let's put in a bowling alley.
But change happens on a college campus. Getting back to the Greek issue, you hear this, I hear this. A lot of people mutter this from time to time. DePauw is anti-Greek. DePauw is somehow not interested in seeing the Greek system survive. And this is a good forum for you to answer that kind of a charge.
Well, if anybody has those feelings, I wish they had an opportunity to be on campus and interview some of the student Greek leaders. I think the leadership in the Greek system, particularly since we've started the Coalition for Responsible Community, have no fears that the administration somehow is out to undercut the system. I think they have no fears of anything except that we're trying to improve the system. We had a meeting of the Coalition for Responsible Community last evening. We had Wynn Smiley, who is the national head of ATO. He was here. His words, not mine, saying that it was a privilege to be on a campus where the president was as supportive of the Greek system as I've tried to be here. You know, this is a controversial topic across the country. I shared with the Board of Trustees at the fall retreat and might actually urge some of our readers to look at a book called Binge that was written by a man named Barrett Seaman. He chose 10 college campuses, spent time there, took a leaf from Time magazine, wrote about what he saw with Greek systems. He had been part of a trustee group at Hamilton College that recommended the abolishment or the radical changes in the system. And toward the end of the book, it sort of laments whether that was the right thing to do or not. We don't have any intention of eliminating the system. We're working very hard to make it stronger, make it even more distinctive.
We are live at the Pulliam Center for Contemporary Media at DePauw University. I'm Ken Owen, class of '82 and Director of Media Relations. In case you're just tuning in, I think everybody out there knows this gentleman, Dr. Robert G. Bottoms, the president of DePauw, in his 20th year on the job. And we're taking your questions live at webcast@depauw.edu. And in fact, one just popped in from a senior. David Simons, class of 2006, asks, what are your plans to improve DePauw's academic prestige as a top liberal arts college?
Well, I'm going to go back to something I referenced once before. When I ask myself, you know, what is it we need perhaps we don't have? I think the internationalization will be a key. I think it will help not only improve the educational value for the students who are here now, I think it will help improve the pool of prospective students who are looking to come into that environment. And basically, we hope to maintain the quality of faculty that we have now. We've grown, as you know, the faculty from 150 to 230 or so. I think we are very pleased with the academic strides we've made. What we've done with technology, I think we've gotten a lot of national recognition. I'm very pleased with the quality of the academic program now. It's certainly better, in my view, than any time since I've been president. Matter of fact, any time since I came to DePauw in 1978.
An issue that is raised by Patrick Rice, a member of the class of 2008, is one that is bandied about quite a bit these days, college rankings. And Patrick wants to know that recently U.S. News and World Report ranked DePauw as the 49th best liberal arts college in the nation. For many students, he says that is a decline in what the number was when they entered here. And he wants to know, how does DePauw intend on increasing these numbers? Particularly in regard to alumni giving, he asks, why I personally hold no meaning for the ranking. Many others do. And I would even venture to say that graduate schools outside of the Midwest would have a better understanding of the DePauw education if our ranking was higher. Obviously, we all want the ranking to be as high as it can, but there are a lot of factors that play into this. Can be.
Well, I could spend the rest of our telecast talking about my opinion about U.S. News and World Report. I don't know of many college presidents who have a great deal of admiration for the methodology that they use, but it's become a very important measure. One of the things I want to make clear to the student who asked the question and to our audience is I'd like to remind people that I think over 900 colleges are ranked in that. So to be in the top 50 is quite an elite group. To even be in the first tier is an elite group. Now, I'm not saying it'd be okay to slip back to where we were. We'd like to do better. We have slipped a few places, and I might respond to that. Some of the measurements in the U.S. News and World Report cover a number of years, like retention rates and graduation rates obviously would go. Several years ago, we had one year where we had a bad retention rate. That continues to hurt us. He mentioned alumni giving. I'm very pleased with the amount of dollars alumni give to the university. When we talk about the physical plant, when we talk about what we put into scholarships, when we talk about a college like DePauw that consistently raises over $20 million a year, our alumni have been very, very loyal. However, the only measure in U.S. News and World Report is percentage participation in alumni giving. We did slip to 33% year before last. We improved last year to 36%. I hope that will help improve our rankings. It hits back on a point I made previously that sometimes the reason maybe our percentage is not as high is because we've made so much progress. I think some people think we don't need the money. The other point I would make about U.S. News and World Report is we do not manage the university to climb in the rankings. Now, we hope we will, but that's not really the basis for our decision. It's not the basis for internationalization. It's not the basis for making the decision we did to increase the size of the faculty or what we've done with faculty. We're concentrating on continually improving the quality of the institution. If along with that we improve in the rankings, we'll all clap our hands and we'll be happy. And if we do improve, I hope people will remember that we're just as skeptical about those rankings if we go up to 40 as we were in the position of 49. Unfortunately, and I mentioned the conversation I had with two Indian students this morning, who were one junior and one a senior at DePauw. I did find out from them when they were shopping for schools, lived in Calcutta, the U.S. News and World Report was one of the sources they went to find out about schools in the United States. So the ranking is important. It's just so complex that it's very hard to move when you have 900 other schools that are trying to move up also.
That's right. It's a moving target.
It is a moving target.
And as I point out to students all the time, this university's been around since 1837, and we've been in the top tier for 6 straight years, but there were many, 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 many years we were not even listed in the top tier.
Well, it was the first time, really, 6 years ago that we were listed, and so now people expect it. And I do hope we move up. We'll see come September. We know from our examination of the various indices they use that last year's experience was better than the year before. But you never know what improvement other schools have shown you.
Well, speaking of making DePauw even more distinctive, one of the initiatives we discussed briefly at the start of the program, the Janet Prindle Institute for Ethics. If you could briefly describe for folks that haven't read the stories or been apprised of what that's going to do for DePauw, what it's going to mean, and what it will do to our programs, the opportunities it will provide our faculty and students.
Well, when you ask yourself the question, what institutions are there in place in this country to help pass positive values on from one generation to the other, I think a liberal arts college is one institution that has the best opportunity to impact the character development of our students. We would like to be able to raise in many of our classes, some would call it ethics across the curriculum, where you don't just have to take a class in ethics or in philosophy, to have important questions raised like what things are important to me, what do I want to do with my life, fundamental questions. What's my responsibility to other people? What's my responsibility to the environment? Now, how will the Institute help? The real purpose of the Institute is to help train faculty across the disciplines to raise these questions in classes no matter what department they are in. And so it'll be a place that we trust faculty, not only from DePauw but from other institutions, will come. There's a great deal of discussion going on in higher education now about what we need to do to sort of recover that stress on moral fiber that liberal arts colleges had from the very beginning. When DePauw was first started, the president taught a class on moral philosophy that all the seniors had to take. Well, I don't plan on doing that, but some of those same concerns that our founders had about stressing the moral implications of behavior and ethical decision making should still be, it seems to me, at the heart of our institution. And the faculty that we have talked with, worked with, visiting faculty members we've had here helping us plan the Institute, thinks that this can be a real, not only treasure for DePauw, but in fact a national treasure where we will become a center for faculty who want to learn, after being trained in a narrow discipline, how to introduce ethical questions into the classes they teach now.
In these sometimes polarizing times, some people might hear the words values and ethics and think, we're not talking about a political bias or a left or right thing. It's more the implications of the behaviors we all engage in every day.
Well, Sandy Aston at UCLA does a series of studies with first-year students. It's been going on for 20 years. One of his findings is that 20 years ago, one of the most important things a student would say in response to why are you going to college is, I want to be able to earn more money, or I want to be able to get a job. But now students are saying, I'd like some help with developing a philosophy of life. I'd like some help helping deal with important questions that I have about meaning. And over half the students surveyed last year said that in the classroom it was rare for those questions to ever be addressed. I think that's a shame.
We have a question in from Webcast at DePauw.edu, and we welcome yours. We're taking them live here from, my screen just moved. I knew this was going to happen once tonight, and here we have it. Just give me a half second. It came from a Management Fellows intern who is in Colorado. Michael Krause is the gentleman's name, and Michael wants to know, many students wonder about the effectiveness of the covenant and the Coalition for a Responsible Community, which was launched a few years back. In your view, is the covenant a success? And we may want to just give people a brief primer who may not know at home exactly what the covenant entails. And what are the future plans for the project?
For people who don't know what the covenant is, when I announced 3 years ago the Coalition for a Responsible Community, as we convened, we looked at other institutions. We looked at the way people are introduced into a community and came up with the idea that yes, we would like to have some statement as to what this community is about. The covenant was developed by students. How is it used? It's used in our orientation process in DePauw Year 1. I think it has been well received. It's caused a lot of discussion. We continue to use it. I think when we first started talking about it, there was a reaction against it. People were saying, well, he's trying to make, or the administration's trying to make, or the coalition's trying to make all of us into cookie cutter kind of molds, all the same. That wasn't the issue at all. The issue was being able to make a public statement to new students entering our community about the kind of community we wanted to be. Now, the future of the covenant, we'll continue to look at it. We talked about it last night in the Coalition for a Responsible Community. Will it need revision from time to time? Perhaps it will. We'll look at that. But do I think it'll go away? No, I don't think it'll go away. I think we're just beginning to move into a time when we can see its real effectiveness.
Have a question from Allison and John Crane in California. They're parents of a class of 2010 student, a student who will be enrolling in the fall. DePauw has among many attributes a beautiful campus, they write. In touring similar campuses, the one attribute that might be improved, they say, is the openness of Royal West Library. Are there plans to expand it in the future? Also, as parents, we would love to see more webcams added to the campus to better stay in touch.
Well, two questions really. Let me deal with the library first.
Sure.
This year we have a group of faculty and librarians and administrators looking at that very question. What do we need to do inside the library to make it more open, to make it more user-friendly, to take advantage of the technology we have, to look at how the Royal West Library fits into the changing role of libraries. So some people now are calling them information science as opposed to the traditional name of library. So will we be moving to continually improve Royal West? Yes. The webcam question is an interesting one. I think people enjoy that. The only downside, on some occasions, students have raised issues about invasion of privacy. We just don't really want to be on camera all the time, walking down the sidewalk or whatever. But so far, I think we've been able to strike a happy medium.
And that's probably a point that deserves some clarification, too, for those that don't know who are watching at home. The webcams are essentially positioned around campus, so you can see live what's happening in a given location, someone walking past East College, for instance. But that's what a webcam is. This is a point we touched on earlier, and Jacob Krause, a member of the class of 2009 who's from Kentucky, asks, what is the cause for the increase in tuition? We've just announced tuition will be going up 4.7% next year. College tuition increases are outpacing inflation, and he asks, will financial aid packages be increasing to match the hikes in tuition?
I've probably been asked that question 20 times. Every year we've increased tuition since I've been president. I wish we didn't have to, but I think it's an economic fact of life. We had an earlier question about the quality of our academic program. One of the ways that we've been able to attract the quality of faculty we have is by having salary pools that are in the range of 5%. That's more than inflation. We're labor intensive. We want to be able to attract the faculty we want here. We also have some costs that we don't have any control over. I talked to Dick Speller, who's our Vice President for Finance. In next year's budget, we expect natural gas prices to go up 50%. We expect electricity to go up 10%. So there are some costs that we don't have any control over. So tuition does increase. The second part of his question perhaps is the more important part, and that is if a person is on need-based financial aid, we make adjustments in the financial aid budget every year equal to the increase in tuition, so that if you were a student here, you're on need-based aid, you would fill out the proper forms for next year, and assuming parental income is the same, it's not always, but just making that assumption, one could expect that financial aid would go up along with tuition.
A point that is sometimes lost as we discuss these things is the real cost of a DePauw education. In other words, alumni giving obviously accounts for much of what the education would cost if a student were paying the full freight, but because of the gifts made through the annual fund, the price is not what it would be otherwise.
That's right. Our budget, and maybe people aren't aware of this is a rather significant institution now. Our budget's in excess of $100 million when one figures in financial aid and all of our costs. Tuition pays only about 56% of that. The rest of the money comes income from endowment, and as you suggest, gifts from alumni. Another thing you asked me earlier, and one challenge I neglected to mention, we are still recovering from the major drop in endowment income we experienced right after 9/11. The income we take into the budget every year from our endowment is based on the average of the last 16 quarters. And so when the endowment goes down like that, it takes us quite a while to recover. In fact, we're not yet to the level of endowment income we had pre-9/11. So all of these things cause financial pressures on us, but we have been increasing, not only next year, but in the past, we've been able to increase need-based financial aid to keep pace with the increase in tuition.
The questions continue to come in at webcast@depaw.edu. We're live at the Center for Contemporary Media on campus. I'm Ken Owen, class of '82, Director of Media Relations at DePauw University. I spent 18 years in TV news, and we're all kind of heading into these waters for the first time together. This is my first webcast, your first webcast, and we're glad you're along. We're going to get back to the questions in a minute, but I wanted to get to a news item. It was finalized today. It will be announced officially later tonight, but we have a commencement speaker.
Well, we do. Let me say a word about our process for the viewers. We have a committee of students and faculty who advise me on a commencement speaker. The choice this year was Senator Evan Bayh, our senator from one of our senators from Indiana, and we received word last night. It took us a while because he had to juggle his schedule, but he will be with us for commencement this year, and we're very pleased with that. And
I'm sure folks that don't live in Indiana are becoming very familiar with him as he is
I think
quietly,
he's become a household word.
Yeah, exploring the possibility of running for president, but there'll be more on our website later tonight on that, but I wanted you folks
Maybe
to
he'll have an announcement for us. Wesley Clark did.
Wouldn't that be terrific? We have a question from Ryan Randolph, class of 2007, who writes, "Student intellectual engagement is a topic of concern that many faculty have expressed. How do you respond to hearing professors' concerns of how students occupy their time outside of the classroom?"
This has been an ongoing debate at DePauw for years. DePauw students are very active. They're very busy. I am often amazed in talking with students trying to set up appointments when they pull out their date book and their schedules, and they're about as busy as mine. I think many members of the faculty would say students should be more intellectually engaged. They're too busy. So there's this tension, I think, in the DePauw community between the value in so many extracurricular activities and the need to be serious in their intellectual pursuits. This is a tension that I don't see going away, but if you look, as Dr. Abram has looked at the grades of our students, they seem to be performing very well, and certainly by standard measures like U.S. News and World Report, which we talked about a few minutes ago, the academic credentials of our incoming students seem to improve every year.
And there seems to be, and this is just going from my personal history here, more to do on this campus these days than there ever has been before in terms of activities and programs.
Well, I think so. I mean, try to get an appointment with some of our students and you'll find out how busy they are.
Stan Jastrzebski, class of 2003, submitted this question. He asks, "Many universities are renowned for bringing back graduates to teach in fields where they themselves found success. DePauw has traditionally found teaching talent from academic backgrounds instead of those people with, as he puts it, real-world experience. Will DePauw think more about bringing in professors who may not have a PhD, but instead could teach students to succeed in their field of expertise?" And he mentions Tim Solso of Cummins or Dick Johnson, a news anchor in Chicago at WLS-TV. Your thoughts on that?
Well, it's an intriguing idea, but in all candor, we probably will not be bringing people from the business community without the proper training in teaching, like into our classrooms as full-time professors. On the surface, there are some problems with it. One is most people from the business world wouldn't come work for what we pay a faculty member. But more importantly, our faculty have truly mastered their subjects, and they have been trained to teach. But on the other side, I think he has a point, and there is a way, and I've done this in the class that Dr. McElligott and I teach. We've done it together. We frequently had guests from our alumni body come in. Tim Solso himself, as was mentioned in the question, has spoken to our class on several different occasions on ethical issues that he's faced being chairman of Cummins Engine. I think that's really the proper use of outside people, is to use them in symposia. We do that a lot. To use them in classes. We have a lot of guest speakers, but as full-time faculty members, I'm not at all sure that's the way to go.
We have a question that came in on webcast at depaw.edu, and that's open to you. Please do send us emails. We'll be here for the next 15 or 20 minutes or so. Frederick Crampton, a 2001 graduate who's in Chicago, asks, "What are the biggest challenges DePauw faces over the next 5 years?"
Well, I touched on that a bit ago. I think one of the things, we do want to internationalize the student body. I think that's a challenge. It's a challenge because we've not done it before. We have to learn how to do that. The financial challenge that I mentioned earlier is there. And one thing we've not mentioned that is a problem that we spend a lot of time on. I mentioned last night we had the coalition meeting. One thing college presidents worry about on every campus I know has to do with the prevalent problem of alcohol abuse. We're working on that through the coalition. It's slow. It will be if we could crack that nut, if we could solve that, we would be ahead of most of what's going on outside DePauw in terms of general society. It's become a real problem. I think that is a challenge for us also.
And it is a problem on every campus, obviously, but it's one we've chosen to be proactive about.
Well, we've been criticized. I think we have been so proactive, to use your word, that occasionally parents might say, well, gee, what's going on at DePauw? Well, as I said, I think the problem is widespread, and we've chosen to talk about it a lot. We've chosen to monitor abuses that go on. We've chosen to be very active in working with the Greek system and with the residence halls to try to improve the situation here. I think we have the attention of our students. 3 to 4 years ago, we had a study, an outside group who came in, the Hazleton group. They interviewed a lot of students. Word came back to me as part of their report that the students aren't sure the administration is really concerned about alcohol abuse. Maybe if you talk to some of our student leaders today, you would think that's the only thing we ever think about. So I consider that a challenge.
A question just popped in from Daniel Shaver, class of 2006, and if you're visiting our website, Danny Shaver and some of his classmates were in San Diego for their winter term in service. They were profiled on an Indianapolis television station last night. They spent the month with homeless teenagers. Very interesting story. You might want to check that out. But Danny Shaver wants to know, on what basis do we select values to emulate and teach each other at DePauw? And given these values, how do we confront injustice in our society? We could talk for a few hours about this, probably.
Gee. Ways we confront values. You mentioned the community service. I think that's an important aspect of DePauw. I think the Ethics Institute will raise important questions for students. I think the symposia that we will have as an extension of the Ethics Institute will raise some of these issues. But the difficult thing is something you mentioned before. We don't have a set of values, a creed per se. We're not trying to indoctrinate people. We're trying to get people to get involved in conversations, perhaps in a new way with faculty help like we've not had before, that would help people examine, well, what are the most important things to me? What should I stand for? And if I can help identify those things I want to stand for as a student, how do I live out those values? Not having them imposed, but discovering what I want to stand for, and then what I plan to do about it, whether it means community service, whether it means going into public service, whether it means fighting injustice. Having injustices called to our attention. I mentioned one that's not controversial before, the environment. Looking through maybe some of the lenses in our biology department about what's going on in the world, being aware of some of the problems, and then having to ask in a very personal way, well, do I want to do anything about this? Do I want to do anything about this or not?
I.J. Bennett, class of 1991, has just chimed in. Moments ago, this popped on the screen. He reminds that when you were inaugurated 20 years ago as DePauw's president, you spoke about the university's commitment to science education, diversity, and moral reflection as imperatives for becoming an institution of even greater distinction. He's kind of, I think he nailed it.
Has a good memory.
That's almost word for word verbatim. During your tenure, DePauw has made great strides and serves as an example for leadership in each of these areas. He asks, are you comfortable that these initiatives have become institutionalized to an extent that your vision in these areas will continue well into the future?
Well, let me talk about the easy two. I hope diversity has been institutionalized. Now, how do you do that? I think now we are criticized in the student press and from faculty if our minority percentage in the incoming class slips. That's a good thing. Pressure should be kept on us to continue our aggressive recruiting of minority students. I think if that initiative is institutionalized, though, you have to do some other things that we've done. We have more minority faculty than we've ever had before. When I became president, we had one minority person as an employee at DePauw. Now we have, I think, by Neil's last count, over 40 minority faculty people. I would depend on those people to keep the pressure on us in continuing to recruit minority faculty. We have more minorities on our Board of Trustees than we had in the faculty. That's a way to institutionalize things. Our speakers, if you look at everything from who we give honorary degrees to speakers, I think diversity has impacted most of the things that we do. I hope that is institutionalized. I think we have it institutionalized in the governance structure. But science education, I think, has absolutely become institutionalized. If you look at what we've been able to do with the Julian Science and Math Center, our e-learning initiative, what used to be the new Olin Biological Building the Manning Field Station and the Nature Park. Our science facilities are better now than they've been in the history of the institution. The third one we're just beginning to get to, and it's the one that I still have so much passion about, and that's moral reflection. Trying to build an ethos about DePauw so that students who are looking at us and students who stay 4 years here cannot escape facing some of the moral issues that we face today. Now, appearance is an important thing. I mean, if you come on this campus for the first time, symbols are important. If you come on the campus for the first time, what do you see? You see the Greek system's important to DePauw. You see all of the Greek sorority and fraternity houses. You see that science education is important to DePauw. You go through the Julian Science Center, you go through the Oldham Building, you go through the Nature Park. By the fall of 2007, you'll also see a rather imposing Prindle Center for Ethics. And as we begin to develop new courses, have our visiting faculty from other institutions, I think you'll see, not just as a symbolic way, but in a real way, that moral reflection is an important part of the ethos of DePauw.
We're getting a lot of questions from students, which is terrific. Mary Compton, class of 2007, from Missouri, but currently interning with the Today Show in New York City, and Nicole Halper, class of 2005, both ask about the faculty and the large number of professors who will be on sabbatical next year. They wonder how that will impact seniors.
Well, I don't think, obviously, if your favorite professor is on sabbatical, that's an impact. But I mentioned earlier, our faculty has grown from 150 to 230. Arithmetic would tell you that in any given year you have about 1/7 of the faculty who would be on sabbatical. But we do have a rather large class graduating this year. The implications, I think, are these. I asked Neil Abram to sort of look at this issue for me, and probably the worst case that might happen next year, our average class size, even with faculty away on sabbatical, might increase from 17 to 18. I wouldn't think that's a dramatic impact. In fact, it may, as faculty members go on sabbatical, renew themselves and come back to the campus with new and enriched courses and experiences, it enhances the education at DePauw.
Have a question from a parent who, Betsy Brown, parent of a junior who lives in Illinois, and she wants to thank and applaud you for giving everyone this opportunity to communicate with you. Her son Austin is a junior at DePauw, and she says, we're extremely happy with his educational experience at the school. But she goes on to say he's a member of the basketball team, and she gets frustrated sometimes, as other parents of athletes here do, that the fans aren't, or the stands aren't more filled, and that there isn't more of a, you might say, school spirit in some regards. Is there anything the president can do, she wonders, to get people in the stands?
Well, I don't know what the president could do to get people in the stands. It's a phenomenon that I've observed over the last 20 years. We do have fewer people in attendance at athletic events. Some of the students in their leadership group talked about different ways to have competitions among living units, that sort of thing. They did have a big, sort of reinstituted an old tradition, had a homecoming parade at one of the football games. That helped. I understand that in just a few days there's to be a big competition among the living units to increase the presence of students at the basketball game. I'm going to go back to a point that's been made already, and it has to do with how busy our students are, how much there is to do. The competition for student time is more significant, I think, here than it's been in the 2 decades I've been president, and so that plays a role.
We have a question just in from a faculty member, Bob Hirschberger, Associate Professor of Spanish and Film from the Department of Modern Languages, and Bob is a high-tech guy. He wants to know what possible uses of the Webcast technology, which you are pioneering tonight. We're pioneers. Do you know that? Do you foresee for future programs or initiatives at DePauw? Might it contribute, for example, to the internationalization of the university?
Well, I have some hopes and dreams that I think Bob would embrace. We are in conversations now with the Lilly Endowment, who've made a very substantial $20 million grant, which let us make the progress on e-learning that we've made. What I would like to see is for us to be able to learn to use technology the way we used to well, let me put it this way. We used to have overseas programs, and we sent a faculty member with our students. And that faculty member made certain that students were involved in the local culture, that sort of thing. Now students go off on their own. There might develop a tendency to stay with their fellow students, to not immerse themselves into the culture where they're living. We might be able to use technology not to be Big Brother looking after the students, but to have weekly conversations with mentors, both students and faculty back on campus, in conversation, in seminars with students overseas as well as on campus. We've begun talking to the Lilly Endowment about being able to provide us with the technology to make that possible. We'll see later whether we're successful with that conversation or not.
It was exactly 4 years ago today that we gave the e-learning initiative, as it was called until then, a name, 361 degrees. And for people who are alums, like myself, who are very familiar with the interaction that takes place in a DePauw classroom, small class size, a lot of faculty-student interaction, friendships are developed. How does technology change teaching and learning at DePauw? Does it? I think some people have this vision that it's somehow distance learning, that you know, we're entering an arena we should not, and it's not that.
Well, it's not distance learning at all. Our alumni would be pleased if instead of listening to the president this evening, they were listening to a panel of faculty members talking about how technology has enabled them to be in more dialogue with their students, both in class and out of class, than they were before. How it's improved various presentations, how it's improved the whole learning process. Our emphasis on technology has been to help faculty people in traditional disciplines use technology as a tool to teach their traditional classes better.
You mentioned study abroad a moment ago, and Reed Smith, a member of the class of 2006 who hails from Wisconsin, wants to know, well, first he makes the statement, 4 years ago as a prospective student, I was impressed by DePauw's commitment to studying abroad both through winter term and for the semester. Since then, he points out, a $2,500 fee has been instituted for those wishing to spend a semester off campus. More students have been denied in their study abroad applications, and the cost of winter term trips, as everything else does, continues to rise. While these factors have not prevented me from taking advantage of these opportunities, I know other students for whom these have been bigger obstacles. And he wonders, what is DePauw currently doing to counter the rising costs of studying abroad and continue to pursue its commitment to study outside of Greencastle?
But one of our problems I've alluded to earlier, and that is one of the reasons for the timing of imposing that fee was that our resources really did diminish. With the stock market drop after 9/11, less endowment income. We had to impose that fee. We have a program that not many schools have. If you're a student here on a merit scholarship, you can take that with you. So we were literally sending a lot of dollars off campus. The program was costing the university several $100,000 a year. So we had to impose that fee. We're not proud of it. We don't like it. What are we doing to deal with that? We have established a financial aid fund so that students who are not able to defray the full cost of that fee can apply, go through the process. That fund is growing. We plan to grow it in each of the next 4 years so that students will not be disadvantaged. There are people who are denied overseas study every year, but it is generally because of some problem with their application, reasons for going, that sort of thing. They're denied for academic reasons. But we're concerned about the fee. I wish we didn't have the fee, but it won't go away real soon. But we will be able to grow the financial aid that's available. We've got probably time for a question and a half here. So I'm going to ask you one, if you can give me a quick answer to this one, and then we've got a final one. Darren Burton, class of 2009 from Illinois, says, do you feel that serving as president of the university for a longer tenure than is the norm for university presidents, which is what, about 6.5 years, has given you the ability to make plans and see them through to make DePauw the strong institution it is today? Well, I think, and I may be a minority among college presidents, I think a long tenure is a good thing. I think it's helped our fundraising. I've built relationships. Some of the questions you asked me earlier, the question Jay Bennett asked, it's taken a long time to put the moral reflection component together. I think it's an advantage.
Well, we have this final question from an old friend of ours, Mac Thorlton, class of '61, former director of alumni relations, who writes from Florida. You've been president of DePauw for the past 20 years. How do you keep fresh and creative, he wants to know. I've spoken to several trustees recently, and they say they haven't seen you as energized as you are today.
Well, first I'd like to thank Mac for that real softball cream puff question. I tell you the way I stay energized. We keep having new ideas. Internationalization is very important to me. The Prindle Institute has energized me in a way I think I've not been energized in the past. Seeing what we've been able to do as a result of Judson and Joyce Green's gift for the Performing Arts Center. These things are terribly energizing. And the final thing I would say is I've told Gwen, my wife, several times, you know, the day it's the opening of school and I'm not excited to see 625 or 35 new students, you know, then it's time to retire. I'm still excited with the start of every new school year.
Dr. Bottoms, thank you for being a pioneer tonight. This has been quite an unusual experience, and we've got some good questions, and hopefully we'll get a chance to do this again sometime.
Well, I hope so.
And we also ought to point out, and I meant to do this off the top of the program, but there are about a dozen DePauw University students in the control room right now making sure this gets to you. This is a largely student-driven production. There are a couple of administrators back there, but folks, the bulk of the folks that are putting the picture on the air and making sure you hear me are DePauw students who work right here at the Center for Contemporary Media, which I think is a real feather in the cap of DePauw, the programs we have, and the hands-on experience that students get here. We also want to thank again IHETS for allowing us to get this out to you. With their help, our 361 program has brought this to you in your homes, in your apartments, in your condos, wherever you might be tonight, in your office. We really appreciate your tuning in. And we want to thank the staff here at the Center for Contemporary Media, particularly Larry Abed, Greg Steffen, and Chris Newton, who really worked hard to make this happen. I want to let you know that later tonight I'll have a couple of clips from this up on the website, and there will be a link to a survey that you can fill out to let us know what you thought of the webcast, perhaps offer some suggestions on what we can do next time or how to make it better. But we really do want to thank you for tuning in and being part of this first of its kind event, and hopefully we'll get a chance to do it again very soon. Again, for President Robert G. Bottoms, I am Ken Owen, Director of Media Relations at DePauw and graduate from 1982. I thank you for joining us, and we'll leave you with some familiar sounds and hope you have a terrific night. Thank you, and here's to DePauw.